Hello and welcome to the Lost Decades podcast. I'm Austin,
I'm Andrew.
and this is episode 5, where we are, for the first time ever, diving into not two, 4 decades. Basically, 2 episodes worth of decades, normal episodes. But we missed last week. Because I know all you listeners out there have been like dying of thirst from not having your new episode.
Yeah.
But here we are back with double the amount of years. So get ready for a good episode.
Yes.
We're
This is
gonna,
actually going to be an interesting episode.
yeah, I'm excited actually. We have some cool characters to talk about, and we're gonna keep it nice and simple. We're just gonna really talk about Egypt and Mesopotamia. So since we took a week off, maybe we should kind of go back a little bit and reflect on what's happening in Egypt. So we got our guy Amenemhat the first.
Oh, you're going all the way
I'm
back.
going back. He founds the 12th dynasty, so we're on the 12th dynasty. He moves the capital to Ijtawi, and it says here he ushered in one of Egypt's most prosperous eras. And then he unfortunately gets assassinated, and his son, Senusret the First, who had been co-ruling alongside him, but was at the time in the south in some sort of battle, becomes the pharaoh, and that's who we'll be really focusing on this episode, and then we'll move on to his succession or his successor. But what did you want to say about anything you wanted to add about Senusret? I know we talked about him last episode, but
We
continuing
talked a
his
good
reign.
bit last time, but I guess just go over it. I mean, he expanded Egypt's domain down into the second cataract, and then towards the end of his reign, got all the way down to the third cataract, which essentially was all of Lower Nubia. They call it Wawat, I think is how they called it back then. But essentially, all of Lower Nubia, which I believe was a separate kingdom, was all controlled by Egypt. And that allowed a ton of gold and pottery and other things to start flowing up to Egypt, which made them much richer and, yeah, kind of extended their influence very, very far. And it got so much that even they talked about that silver was so much more expensive than gold because Egypt had so much gold. So, not that it was like no one cared about gold, it was just not as rare or expensive as silver.
That is cool to think about. And because, yeah, that makes sense because I remember they always talk about Mansa Musa, which is much, much later, but he was in somewhere in Western Africa, and he apparently had like more gold than anyone's ever had ever.
Hmm.
So, yeah, Africa has a lot of gold. And I read that it was a different time, society was different because it says here that Senusret was married to basically his sister, who he called his
Yeah,
sister wife.
doing the Targaryen thing.
Very Targaryen coded, yeah. Um,
His
I
sister.
wonder, yeah, I wonder if we are going to get into like some pharaohs that have like weird like birth defects and stuff, like with the what's the people in the Holy Roman Empire that
Are you talking about the
weird
people from
chins?
Spain, the Habsburgs, who had all the birth
Habsburg, sorry,
control?
yeah, the Habsburg.
Yeah.
Um, well, do we want to
But
move
yeah,
on
so it was
to
mainly that. His reign was more about stabilization and stuff like that. Went until 1926, I believe.
right? That's what I have.
Yeah,
So lower
1926.
20s.
And then his son, Amenemhat the
The
second,
second,
can finally say that name correctly. Um, he took over, and from what I read, there wasn't as much as I thought there was about him. I remember reading a bunch, but I realized
yeah, the article looked long, but it was kind of a lot of
it's
random
kind of
stuff.
just talking a lot about his advisors and just
Yeah,
different,
it does talk a
like
lot
he
about
built some pyramid complexes, which was interesting, but nothing that the average listener is gonna like be really
well, I do have some
by.
pictures actually. I did so sorry for the audio listeners. I'll try not to just dwell on these pictures, but for the YouTube watchers, this was one of the buildings he made I don't really have the info. I should have looked up more specifically, but I know these are related to
Oh, well,
Sanu.
that reminds me. I know Senusret the first. I know we just ended up ending him, but he has the largest freestanding obelisk that's still standing today in Egypt.
Oh,
Longest and
awesome.
largest.
Interesting. I'll see if I can find that. But um, oh yeah, I have here the a gig obelisk. It has a watermark on it, but
Yep.
it looks pretty cool. Anyway, I won't. That's it. It's like an obelisk. Um, it is cool because have you ever been to? There's that obelisk in near the Metropolitan Museum.
I don't
Like
think
crazy.
so. I remember seeing a bunch in Rome.
True, true. That there are a lot in Rome. I actually was planning on going to the Met today to kind of like prep for this podcast and like take pictures and stuff, but it's the one day of the week that they're closed. So I also I had some extra time. I'm on spring break right now, so I made a new cover for the podcast.
Oh, I like it.
Thank you. Yeah, so we got a new. You'll if you're listening right now, you'll see we got a new snazzy uh, art. I don't know what to call it. Cover art.
Spoilers too for what's coming.
True. Yeah, this hasn't even happened yet. It's
Yeah.
very, yeah, it's very Babylon focused, but I'm a sucker for that. Um, so yeah, just
Well, but
like
going back to
yeah,
Amenemhat the second, I know he got Egypt to its at least this middle kingdom of Egypt to its largest extent until it comes into the new kingdom.
so that's like
So,
what, like hundreds of years later, right?
yes. And it's not that it's all downhill from here because there's
Hmm.
several rulers and they're stable, but in terms of territorial
Growing.
expansion, this is the
Yeah.
end. Um, And he also saw, which is kind of spoilers for future dynasties, but he saw a large expansion of foreigners from different regions like Canaan and the Levant and Nubia coming up and living in Egypt looking for work, looking to build, looking to farm. And Egypt was prospering at this time, so they moved in. And while they were at least like a lower status in society, they were at least accepted as normal citizens. They weren't treated any differently. So they were able to integrate really well. And so this kind of saw I guess you'd call it a metropolitan boom, if you will. Lots of different cultures melting together to create this kind of like, yeah,
Melting pot. I did
yeah.
see
I
that.
said
Yeah,
melting, and then I was trying to think of another word. I was like,
salad. I did see that. Yeah, that because as we'll see, we're not even at the part in the Bible when the Jews get like sort of Moses takes them out of Egypt. This is actually when they're going into Egypt. And according to Wikipedia and other sources, they kind of sort of basically did it from their own will. They were just like, "Oh, there's like jobs in Egypt, so we're going to move there because they're doing well. It's stable."
yep.
And they started working there. So we'll check back in on the Canaanites in Egypt. They're doing their thing. I also saw in just while we're talking about things that aren't Egypt, in Anatolia, apparently that's where some Assyrian merchants established a thriving network of trading colonies in Anatolia. Apparently, the most famous one is in Kultepe, and they exchange tin for silver and gold. So that's the whole bronze. That's what the Bronze Age is all about, is tin. I
10.
don't think we've actually said that for people who might not know, but well, first of all, we're in the Bronze Age, and it's because they started making things out of bronze. But the way you make bronze is you take copper and then you just add a little bit, like 10% tin, and put those together, and you get bronze, and it's a lot stronger than copper. And so, if you have bronze, then you're going to be able to defeat people with copper in battle and everything like that.
And then the big deal was that copper was more or less everywhere.
Right.
Tin was hard to find.
Pretty rare. It's basically the oil of their time.
Yeah.
And I read a lot of people say like that is one reason why like the Bronze Age is what we think of. Like when you think of, okay, what's the earliest time in civilization? you kind of think of the Bronze Age, even though there was the Stone Age and there was the technically the Copper Age. But
Hmm.
it wasn't until Bronze that people really needed to start trading so much. A lot of reason was for the tin, and that kind
Yeah.
of started the trading like super intensely. And then probably it was like a exponential thing where then you the tin is also improving like every aspect where like every tool is like a little bit stronger and it just kind of makes everything slightly easier.
Yeah, it builds upon itself. Plus,
Right.
they get better at the craft, figure out more things they can use it
Hmm.
for.
And I also saw for Amenemhat the second, it was just like what Senusret had done with his father, Amenemhat the first, where he like they co-ruled for quite a while, like at least like 10 or 15 years, I think.
It's cool that that stuck around. I mean, it also helped with the stability. We're not hearing about much revolts in between each ruler. And on top of that, they're having these really long rules.
Right.
Like,
That is one thing I noticed. It's like I forget which one, but one of these guys ruled for like 50 years. Was it
I
Eminem?
mean, yeah, I think that was the first one.
Yeah,
Snooze ruled for 40.
40.
Amenemhat the second ruled for like 30.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I guess when you don't have elections, it's just can you live? Can you just
Can you
well, yeah,
live?
things could happen, I guess, but it does feel like yeah, like in Egypt in particular, if you could become pharaoh, it was pretty easy to hold on to. Like people, I think maybe because people were actually afraid of the gods and everything, that they didn't want to assassinate you or mess with you. That's just my random.
Yeah, it's also just from what I've read too, they were pretty, which I guess makes sense for the time, but they were pretty brutal about any sort of uprising or dissent at all.
Right.
Where, I mean, they're like, oh, I don't like the king. And they're like, all right, well, I'm just going to kill you then. Like, so
I
made it
know.
pretty easy to surround yourself with people who liked you.
It is true. It's like living in like 2026, like whatever. It's easy to be like, oh man, like I can't believe they were so into the pharaoh or whatever. But I don't know. If I think about it, if I feel like if I lived in 2000 BC and I was in Egypt, like I would probably just be fully like, yeah, like the pharaoh's awesome. Like I don't want to cause any trouble. I'm just gonna be
Well,
like,
especially when you think all this god stuff is real, all their gods
yeah,
are real, and the pharaoh is literally like the son of Ra. You're like, okay, well, I'm definitely not messing with that guy.
definitely. Yeah. It's not worth like I want democracy. I want to be able to vote for the pharaoh. It's like, no, I'd rather survive than
Yeah.
than vote for some other guy to rule over me. One thing, this is just a random thought, but I feel like it's interesting to just think about the fact that basically the only reason we know any of this stuff we've been talking about on this podcast is because of the Rosetta Stone and they could translate hieroglyphics.
Yes.
Because otherwise, if you really look at hieroglyphics, like no one would have been able to just figure it out. Like, oh yeah, like that's definitely what that says. It's like
Hmm.
an eagle and a cat. Um, it's just I hope that someday, maybe with AI or something, they'll be able to actually finally translate. It's called like Linear A. Was like the early like Greek script that we still don't know what it says. So then we could have like a whole. We might have to go back and do episodes on if they can
Well,
ever.
well, a lot of this too is we just have to find it. I've realized too when it comes to Mesopotamia and Egypt, some of the stuff we don't know because we're just like, oh, well, we don't know where their tomb is. So we just found that in this one
Right.
temple, they wrote down his
Ugh,
name.
I
Really existed.
know.
Like,
That's one thing that getting into this kind of history will make you even more depressed when there's like wars and stuff because you're like, there's so much cool stuff that is in like the places that are getting the most destroyed by like battles for the past like 50 years. So it's just, yeah,
yeah.
maybe once that ends, it'll be easier. But um, okay. I think I said
So
everything about Senusret, Amenemhat the second. I mean,
I
I
think
just
it's
wanted to
time
add that
to
he did the co-ruling.
want to move it over to Mesopotamia.
Let's see what's they're messing around with in Mesopotamia. So I'm excited to get here because, um, well, just to set the scene, like I did with Egypt, I guess, we had the third dynasty of Ur. It's done. I know it's been done for a while, and Isin has been the prominent leader in the area of Mesopotamia, and there's the King Ishbi era,
He's the
and
one who put Isin kind of on the map. He rebelled against the Earthly dynasty, and when
yeah,
they fell, he took the lands from the Elamites,
and
basically
he
consolidated power and pretty much took over as the new successors to the Earthly dynasty. And in fact, tried to emulate it that way as, oh, we're just, Sumerians, Akkadians, even though they were Amorites. But
right, yeah, a lot of these people had like respect, like legitimate respect for like a lot of these cities, like Ur and like definitely Nippur. Not only because if you controlled it, it was like, okay, you're basically the king of Mesopotamia if you can control these particular cities, and like the gods of those cities are like in your favor and all that kind of stuff. And I guess specifically they would say they had kingship over Sumer and Akkad. That was kind of like the official. It's almost like the United King of like I'm the United Kingdom or something. It's like that if you can control, or like a Lower and Upper Egypt. It's kind of like for Mesopotamia. It's like if you're king of Sumer and Akkad, you're sort of the king of like the whole area.
yeah.
But then, yeah, so that we kind of that's all stuff we talked about last episode. And now that we're in the 1940s to 1900, this is really the rise of Larsa. So we're in the Isin-Larsa period, and now this is time for Larsa.
So I say we start with Isin, though. There's not a
Okay.
ton,
Yeah.
mainly because Larsa, too. As you
Right,
guys
right.
can
No,
see,
we
we're
should
going to get
start
to
with
some major
the
players, but
fall.
before we get there,
Yeah.
there's a couple other guys, from 1954 to 1935. There's this Ishme Dagan. Not much is known about him, but he was probably at the height of the hegemony of Isin, had the most control. It was clearly a stable time because it had Durham wrong. Stable is take it with a grain of salt because there's still Amorite raiders going around. There's still cities not fully cooperating, but the king's mostly going around and just going to temples, doing prayers, promoting different leaders at different cities.
And say his name again.
Ishme Dagan.
And he was the king of Isin.
He was the king of Isin from 1954 to 1935.
Okay. And then I have here after him, we've got Lipit Ishtar, who's the
Yes.
king.
And
And so
we
we're
know
still,
very little about him. All
right.
we know is he was, like you said, going more in the direction of being Sumerian, where he actually had his law code written in Sumerian, just like the Earthly dynasty, where the previous people didn't. So it'd been 100 years since that happened, and he was basically writing it, trying to say, like, see, like we basically are Sumerian. We're the same as the Ur dynasty. And he had the law code taught in schools, and it actually was passed down in that area for hundreds of years, even during different periods.
Yeah,
Um,
the thing I can't help comparing it to constantly because I'm doing the other podcast is England, but I feel like it's a country a lot of people know about, and it's like I feel like for me, I think of it as so like Lipit Ishtar is basically he's the fifth king of the first dynasty of Isin, so he's almost like well, basically what I'm trying to say is that the Sumerians are like the Anglo-Saxons, and then the Amorites are sort of like the Normans, where it's like, all right, we took over, but now we're kind of going native and like becoming, and now English is slowly becoming like the common language. You get what I mean?
oh no, I totally get it.
So that's how I'm able to like process this information, I guess.
No, it makes sense. I mean, it's all about, as we've learned from Amenemhat too and stuff. It's about, even though you took over and you're a new ruler, it's tying yourself to the previous one for legitimacy to show this is why I'm
Mhm.
supposed to rule. Like the gods want this. This is
And if
supposed to
you
happen.
live somewhere, like you just naturally become like those people. Like if you move somewhere, even if you have a different culture, like if you live there your whole life and then you have a kid there, like that kid especially is gonna really become like where you live, even if you also speak a different language at home or something.
And they also just realized that the previous people were the reason it was so successful. So they realized that,
Mhm.
if
You
things
don't
are
want to
working,
change
it
too
shouldn't
much.
be shaking the pot too much. So
Well, I can't, as anywhere I can think of in history, I can't really think of a successful conqueror who was super strict about everywhere he would conquer, he would force them to change and be exactly like the original, like conqueror's culture.
Hmm.
The only people that could do that is if you have a really small, like maybe empire, but any like size, like you just can't do that. And if you want to have a big empire. So speaking of Lipit Ishtar, um, so when he dies, we're gonna get to this guy Gungunum later, but
Well,
I
no,
had,
and that's even related now. We'll get to him later, but they said because if we want to get to Ninurta, one
yes,
of the reasons I is she is or I keep saying she. I don't know why the name just sounds she,
it
but
ends with an A, I guess. It does sound feminine, yeah.
he is a usurper. But one of the things I
Yeah,
read is they think he came to the throne possibly because
Gungunum.
Gungunum capturing Ur.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, it
Ah.
says they think that, and I guess it's possible it wasn't, but it's like that makes so much sense to me that Lipit Ishtar dies, Gungunum maybe like at the same time. I don't know what happened first. If Gungunum's like,
Well,
oh,
Gungunum captured it first during Libet Ishtar's reign. Yeah, I was
oh,
able to
he
confirm
did.
that it was captured
Okay.
during while he was alive.
And then that kind of then he dies, and then it's the perfect opportunity for Ur-Ninurta, who is like a native Sumerian ancestry guy, usurps the throne. It's kind of the perfect chance for him to do that.
You can kind of tell from the name changes because we've had like Ibn Dagan, Ibn Shashi,
Lipit
Ishin Dagan,
Ishtar,
and then Libet Ishtar, and then it's just Ur-Ninurta. It's like it's a
Ur-Ninurta.
clear distinction
Yeah.
of
That is
someone.
one thing I've really been enjoying picking up on. That's a good point. Is like like going back to Egypt. It's like there's like five guys named Amenhotep, and some of them are like the viziers and like the seneschals or whatever. And like you're like, oh, that was just the Middle Kingdom ancient Egyptian version of like Bill was
Yeah.
Amenhotep, and like yeah, and you're like, oh yeah, like that sounds different than yeah, like when I get to Babylonia, it's like, yeah, exactly. Like Lipit Ishtar, like those do all sound similar. And then, like Ur Ninurta. Yeah, it must have something to do with the city of Ur. Anyway, um, no, I love it. I love that's the thing about taking our time through this podcast is it's like we would have never noticed this kind of stuff, but now it's like, oh yeah, that's clearly a Sumerian name.
Yeah.
That's not a Amorite name.
And it is just a coincidence, I think, but it is funny that, yeah, Sumerian takes over, and this is considered the decline of Isin. But I don't really consider it his fault, per se, because we'll get to him, but Gungunum
Mm-hmm.
was a hell of a man. I don't
He
know.
was, yeah.
It's
I was
kind of hard to talk about these two guys because they were Ur-Ninurta and Gungunum are kind of going at each other during this time. So it's going to be kind of hard to talk about one and then talk
and not
about
talk
the
about the other.
other.
That's true. Yeah, I guess we'll kind of talk about both. Just real quick. I'll fully dive into Gungunum, but for Ern and Urta, yeah. So he takes over, and well, yeah. Let's just get into Gungunum because I have a lot to say. So
Yeah,
first
I
of
mean,
all, he
it's
just has
easier to
a
get into
sick
Gungunum because
name.
that's what this is about. Like,
He
he's
has a
like,
sick name. I have to say. I don't know. There's something. It just rolls off the tongue. It sounds like very video gamey. I don't know
yeah.
what, but it sounds very like in Zelda, the like Gorons, like "Hello, I'm Gungunum," something like
I mean,
that.
yeah, it sounds cool. He does also sound like, I mean, granted, I'm sure he's a regular guy, but it almost gives villain vibes, even though I don't
Yeah,
know.
but it's like cool villain, like
Oh, no, no, I
anti-hero or
agree, but that's
something.
what I
Yeah,
mean.
yeah, yeah.
It's
It's
like, oh,
scary.
Gungunum's
It's
coming.
scary. Yeah,
And we know a lot about Gungunum in terms of like historically, because
right.
it's funny to just go on a slight tangent. Before him was Zabaya,
Hmm.
Baya, Baya.
Zendaya.
Anyway, we literally only know that he referred to himself as the chief of the Amorites, and that he has an inscription that states that he built a temple to Ebabar,
Okay.
and that's
Who's
literally
that?
it. That's
Who's
literally
that
all they
before?
know about him. They said because they only found two inscriptions of him ever. One talking about the temple and one with his name on the Sumerian kings list. And then that's it.
Oh, I
And
think
then
this.
it comes to Gungunum and they got like pages. So it's really funny.
I know. I do think. I mean, I guess it just it matters how much you actually do, and part of it's probably just luck if like your records got saved or whatever. But yeah, I think a lot of it is like you rule for a long time and you conquer a lot, and then they write about you. Whereas like yeah, other people maybe just rule for like 5 years or something. I think this picture is maybe the King's List or something like that. I really, I have the pictures. I
That's
can't
King's
confirm what.
List of Larsa.
Nice. Okay. Perfect. Well, that's who we're talking about. And I have here that he ruled from 1932 to 1906.
Yes, that's
So
what I
that's
have
kind of
too.
perfectly we're I'm glad we did the 40 years this time because it's nice to end on 1900 and we can really talk about there are a lot of long rulers. We're in kind of a nice solid, not quite stable, but yeah, all these major places have these long-term
It's a time
rulers.
of great change too, which is funny because I know that sounds like the opposite of stability, but what I mean is like we're getting rulers that are ruling for a long time who are big players in the future that's coming. Well, not even the future, just in their lifetimes. That sets the stage for the future.
Right. And I feel like after this, like the next episode or few, like I think it's going to be shorter. It's going to be like, okay, this guy ruled for 5 years and then this guy ruled for 7 years type of thing. Whereas this time we're really like this whole time period is essentially Gungunum for Larsa. And let's see if I can find a map of Larsa really quick. Because I
Of the
had
city itself?
not the city, but just
Oh
like
yeah,
oh,
yeah, yeah.
there
You
it
should
is.
be able to see it there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there it is. It's for listeners. It's essentially so the Persian Gulf used to be go up further north, so all these cities were closer to the water. But essentially, Larsa
I think I heard
is
it's 25 miles north of and it's about 30 miles southeast of Isin.
okay. So yeah, their major rival is Isin, and yeah, they're decently far away, but close enough that you could see how they would be
And again, in
rivals.
this time period, Isin controls most of what you see stopping around Kish.
Okay. And yeah, we've got Nipper is actually much closer to Isin, and it's essentially if you can control Nipper, you control it all. You control
Yeah,
the key to the kingdom.
it's Arrakis of.
Right, exactly, Arrakis. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah. Um, well, so speaking of his name, I looked up, and Gungun in Amorite means protection, defense, or shelter. Gungunum. Uh,
Gungunum.
And I saw that basically one of his first things he did when he was in charge was he actually kind of conquered Elam. I don't know about conquered, but he sort of like fought back the Elamites.
Yes, and I heard the reason too. They think they don't know for sure because obviously conquer is going to conquer, but
Hmm.
they said they think one of the reasons was it's not known, but we when we talked back about Ishbi era, he made an alliance with Elam by marrying one of his daughters off to one of their princes, and it's possible that that relationship, that alliance, had lasted until now, and Larsa seen it as the if they want to break free of Isin, they have to strike at the ally first. Elam knocked them out of the picture to free up their eastern side so they can turn and then face
And fight
Isin.
their actual rival, Isin.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. And then it says that his first major success was a pretty big one. It was his conquest of which had, yeah, like we said, been a part of Isin's domain since um, basically since the Elamites had
And
uh,
then, other than it being a very important area, culturally, spiritually, is also that it was right on the water. Was right on the water, so it was a vital trade route, and it allowed a lot. It had a lot of aqueducts and canals running through it that Isin had been using to help support their city. So by losing that, not only did they lose kind of the cultural center, but they also lost a major powerhouse for trade and water and food.
yeah, it's just one of those things where some cities just have really good geography.
Yeah.
Um, and let's see. So,
He conquers makes a big deal about it, which I mean, it was
mhm.
a big deal, but it is funny how it seems like he was very flashy. In fact, he kind of, that's why they talk about it. He kind of cools down for several years and it's just like, I'm building statues at I'm adding to my king name. I'm kind of just
Mhm.
going back and forth, kind of rubbing it in Isin's face that like, oh, I have now, and kind of parading it around to everyone else in Sumer that and Akkad that like, hey, look at me, I'm a rising power. I got Like, it's a big deal.
It is interesting because looking on this map, especially, it's making me realize that it's like Isin has the advantage of being closer to Nippur, which is like the religious, essentially the main god of their religion is based in Nippur. But then Larsa is much closer to and I feel like is kind of more like the cultural, like political capital. So they kind of both have their advantages, um, which I just sort of realized. But yeah, I saw that he's, it's a good if you're ever like playing a video game where you're conquering a city, you want to spend a couple turns, like getting everything stable, building things up, making sure everything's chill. You're like, okay, cool, I control and then now I can start expanding.
And it shows that he had a lot of respect for how was run and how Isin did things because they showed that a lot of the political figures at remained, just
Hmm.
kind of switch allegiances.
Even
He
if
didn't
they
hurt
were
like
appointed by the kings of Isin, appointed these guys in but he would still keep them on.
and that wasn't common, just to point that
Right,
out. Like
right.
that typically they did a purge of these kinds of
Hmm.
people and just put in all their own people. But in
Exactly.
this case he did not.
Yeah, I
But
saw
then
like
after the
there's
quiet years, you can't have quiet years without something after.
so I saw that, let's see.
Malgium, Uruk, and Nipper.
Yes. So I also saw that, yeah, one reason we know that that's what he conquered is he um references in some poem or something. He's like, yeah, the gods on Enlil and Nana are like on my side, and they're the deities of Uruk, Nipper, and
Yeah.
So
And the big
it sort
thing
of
too
implies
is,
he
yeah,
controlled those.
Ninurta at this time is trying to stop him from taking Nipper. Obviously, it's a huge deal to him. Um, because he still even calls it, that's what I read that he still even calls himself the king of or at least it's mentioned in his title that he
In
rules
whose title? In
in Ninurta, even though he literally doesn't control it.
well, it's in his name, so he's like, hey, it's literally in my name.
Yeah.
I control it. I did also see one thing that was interesting about him was apparently he really liked like shepherd metaphors. He like always would say like, I'm the shepherd of this land, and I don't know, that was just a
Yeah, I mean,
quirky thing
later he
about him.
when well, we'll get to that, but yeah, he mentions later in his speech that he freed the flock, and I was like, okay,
He freed the flock. Because yeah, he freed some city from Gungunum, and he's saying like, yeah, like I freed the city from his control, which is a
because that's
classic
what I was gonna say.
maneuver.
Yeah, Gungunum, because Gungunum moves in and starts. Yeah, he takes Nipper, Uruk, and Malgium. Um,
Mhm.
and one of the key things I read too is by taking Nipper, which again we kept talking to the spiritual head, also seems to I don't know how you'd phrase this, but like give you the ability to claim that you're king of Sumer and Akkad now.
Exactly, yeah. There's some. It's like if you controlled Washington D.C. It's like, all right, you're the president because you
Yeah.
control. Like that's, I feel like the best comparison. But that's what's so different is we just have no comparison of like it'd be like if America was so Christian that if you captured like some major religious city, which just doesn't make any sense. Uh, it's hard for us to wrap our heads around because it was like the city was so connected with the god.
Well, and I love how it's so, how would you phrase this too? Like accepted or respected by everyone else. I don't mean the title
Yeah.
itself. It's funny that like he doesn't call himself that until he takes Nipper. And when he takes Nipper, Ninurta doesn't call himself that anymore. Like
Mhm.
it's funny because I feel
He
like in
has
more
to admit
modern
it.
times
Yeah.
you'd see themselves both claiming like, no, no, I'm the king of them. I'm the king. But they're like, well, I mean, he has it. They're like, I don't like the guy, but he controls Nipper, so clearly he's king of the Sumer and Akkad.
I know it does seem like there's something going on. I mean, maybe also in Egypt, but especially in Mesopotamia, where yeah, it's weird because to us this is such the distant past, but for them, it already feels like a lot of these cities have so much like history that and like legendary mythology that they don't want to upset, the gods and everything. It's nice because things are so different now. Like the idea that someone would conquer. I mean, it's weird. I don't know. Even if you think about like colonization or something, it's like, okay, they conquered like this area. but they're gonna really like not change it, and they're gonna, completely respect like all of their culture
I
and
mean,
everything.
again, it's funny how they respected that every city had its patron deity, and even if they hated that person, they hated that city, they respected the deity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Enlil was apparent that was the name of the
Yeah,
supreme
yeah, yeah. He's their
deity.
head of the pantheon, if you will.
Yeah. So yeah, good old Gungunum is king of Sumer and Akkad. So it really is easy for me to compare it to. That's essentially like saying you're the king of Upper and Lower Egypt. Like that means you're officially like the head of this whole region.
Yep. And then his last years, he pretty much just focuses
He
on
just
improving
chilled.
defenses,
Yeah.
fortifications, stabilizing everything, pretty much laying the groundwork for what's going to come with Larsa. Um, and he had a pretty, like, I guess it's a weird, a good way to phrase it, but I guess it's like an uneventful succession. When he died, they pretty much the next person took over. But what blows my mind again is going back to that other thing of we know so much about him, but not about other people. When I was trying to do research on his successor, her page
There's
or
nothing.
there's literally like nothing.
Yeah, it's so
There's
weird.
like absolutely nothing. And I'm like, how did you have this guy that we have paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs and all these different articles and stuff written about him, and then this person's like Google's like who? Like,
Right. Yeah, the Wikipedia article is like a small paragraph.
yeah,
It's weird. I
not
mean,
even. It's two sentences.
right, right. I know. That's what it's, I guess excited is a weird word, but it's like that's one thing that's going to happen is, major spoilers, but in a couple dozen episodes, we're going to get to the Bronze Age collapse and things are going to go a lot quieter. We're going to really be like
Yeah,
looking at
it'll
a
be
lot of
probably
more
mainly focused on Egypt
Wikipedia
again. I think
articles.
they're the only ones who pulled through.
Yeah. But no, I don't know. There is something cool about Gungunum. Like, I think because it's not like Sargon of Akkad, where it's like, wow, like you kind of a lot of people know him, and he conquered this whole area. It's like he didn't do quite as much. He was more like a minor. Like he conquered his. I mean, I guess he basically did about the same as Sargon of Akkad. It was just he did it after him, and it maybe wasn't quite as like solid. Where he
Well,
didn't
I mean,
like,
because speaking of not as solid, it's because he literally loses Nipper,
yeah,
like
he loses Nipper kind of immediately. Yeah,
to go
backspace.
back to not Shade Stone, but yeah, to go
Yeah.
back to Ernanurta. Ernanurta comes back and saves him. That was what I was saying that earlier, where he's like, "I've set the flock free," like or something like
Right,
that.
right. He reclaimed Ur from the filthy Gungunum.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, I actually saw, and it makes sense to me that it's most likely that Ur-Ninurta um, was doing a counteroffensive, recapturing Nippur and a couple other cities, and he was eventually stopped at Adab, which I actually see on this map, which is kind of in the middle-ish. I don't know, but that's probably where he got killed at that battle.
yeah. They think he died there, which technically happens after 1900, but it's still interesting to see that this is laying the groundwork of even though he didn't take everything and he lost Nipper and stuff, you can kind of see there with the dark purple, he was able to take enough and enough of the cultural areas and the stronghold cities
Mhm.
that Isin clearly, if Isin didn't react quickly and take everything back, they were going to be on the decline. Which, spoiler alert, is
Right.
happening. It's called the Isin-Larsa period for a reason. Isin rules the beginning, Larsa rules the end.
We're basically done with this. And yeah, that's a good way to think about it, right? Is so, or actually, I don't know. I'm curious what you think. So, like, uh, Gungunum, when he did control like Nipper and everything, like, would he be considered kind of the emperor, like above Isin and like he controls all of it? Or is it just sort of like he controls all this stuff and Isin is still there separate, independent, but just way less powerful?
Isin is still there, separate, independent, just less powerful, but still a threat in itself. He wouldn't be able to just take it outright. And in fact, not to, go too far ahead, but again, Isin doesn't fall that quickly. So it's more like Isin went from the dominant hegemony to now there being two powers in the region.
Right, right. It'd be like if, yeah, again, if like Egypt, it was like, all right, now we've got the Upper Egypt and the Lower Egypt are kind of two
Yes,
separate
exactly.
kingdoms. And that's what's funny is in Egypt, like even though we're starting so far back, it we didn't even talk about the Old Kingdom because that was earlier, and apparently I think it was the Old Kingdom were the first ones that connected the Upper and Lower Egypt, and they connected the crown. So there used to be a separate crown for Lower Egypt and one for Upper Egypt, but all the pharaohs we talk about always have the combined crown because that's just ended up becoming like the default. Like this, you kind of have to have both parts to really be Egyptian.
Yep, and that's kind of what we're seeing here is
That's kind of
that
what's happening. Yeah.
they're independent entities, and even though one, whoever controls the Nipper, claims to be, king of both, they're not really in actuality.
And you can see here how close and Larsa and Uruk and all this stuff, or really everything, but especially those cities, are really right on the water, right on the Persian Gulf. Whereas now it's, well, it shows you
You
here
can
too.
see present
It's
day
quite
coastline.
a
Yeah,
bit far away. Yeah, it's much further away. So, well, I do want to say someday it would be really cool to maybe we can do like our when we get to year zero or something, we can go to one of these cities. I just think it'd be cool. Maybe not one of these, but I don't know,
you
like
mean in real life?
in real life, yeah. I
I'd
just
want to go, but aren't these like present day Iraq?
I know.
So
I'm saying maybe in
like,
like 10 years. Maybe in 10 years. Maybe when we get to 2026 on our
yeah,
podcast in like 10 years, we'll have peace in the Middle East and we will
I
go
would love to
to
see. Like, I have
Larsa.
nothing against it. I just, yeah.
I know. I don't want to go now. I'm joking. You never know.
Yeah.
Or especially like I don't know, like so much of this stuff would just be crazy to see because a lot of it's still kind of there. Like when doing all this research, you see like, and here's the pyramid or
Yeah,
the
I think it's really cool.
obelisk.
I think this whole region has interesting. We have interesting stories coming. I thought this week was pretty cool. We had some cool
It was a
players.
good one. It was a really yeah. I mean, because we kind of cheated because we did 40 years, but I think we're basically going to keep on the 40-year, the 4-decade trend for at least the next couple episodes, just because yeah, I think it right? Is
We're
that
trying to just avoid too many lull episodes where it's like
yeah? And we were
there's
saying
five kings we know nothing about because there's no info.
yeah,
Like,
right. And I think, yeah, this 40-year, especially for this, we had all these long rules. It kind of, we would have had to stop halfway through.
yeah, I'm glad we got to do this because we would have only, if we did the 20 years, we would have only gone halfway through both these guys' rules, and it wouldn't have been as
Mhm.
interesting.
Oh, one thing before we sign off that I thought was interesting, going back to Egypt, I had mentioned I wish there was a movie of like an assassination of a pharaoh. So first of all, I did see there was like a random History Channel, like half documentary, half movie. It was kind of like I thought it was going to be more like a movie, like a historical
Mhm.
drama, but it was really just like a History Channel documentary about like this one pharaoh. It wasn't the one we knew about, but there's some other pharaoh that gets assassinated. So anyway, I saw that, and then there was apparently a pretty famous story called the story of Sinuhe, 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 that is actually yeah, it was literally about Amenemhat getting assassinated and Senusret
Dang.
like becoming the king. And I think there was even like a novel in like the 50s that a guy kind of like based on that story, and it kind of is like a novel of like that. So they could legitimately make it into a movie. It
They
basically
could.
is already a book. So
You heard it here first.
heard it here first, and I feel like historical we're actually in a really nice time period for like historical dramas because we got like Nosferatu, like all the that director like I
Mhm.
think Robert Eggers like always does that stuff, and I don't know, like Wuthering Heights and Bridgerton, and so it could happen. And
Yeah.
maybe the next Bridgerton will be in Egypt. That'd be cool. Well, let's see. Follow us on Instagram, the Lost Decades Pod. We'll be posting little clips from the show. Follow us on YouTube at the same name. Listen to my other podcast, The Rain Check, where I talk about the kings of England. Do you want to promote anything, Andrew?
No.
Watch him stream the Pokemon trading card game on Twitch.
Oh, I know, right? If you like watching
Follow Silver Baron.
25-year-old Pokemon trading card games.
Honestly, that I'm sure people would watch it. I would watch it. All right. Until next time, that's the Lost Decades podcast. Get lost.